I think for us, obviously what we want to see is the decent healthcare in place and for the whole population. I think one of the reasons we had such a powerful rejection of the government's plan on how to address the costs in the health system on the co-payment was because people understood that it was taking us further and further down a much more user pays, privatised approach, when I think the public really want to have confidence that regardless of your income, regardless of your background and regardless of your age, you will have access to good, decent healthcare. And there's a big question, of course, for us, which we need to work on, about how we properly fund that in a progressive, fair way. I think the particular question you raise is one that will be important for the people who are directly affected by those questions to engage with themselves. And as you know, many older people are actively themselves considering about their own pathway of dignity towards the end of life. I think we need to deeply respect those processes and that understanding, but I do not think we should be using the pressure on the health budget as a way to drive any discussion about that.
John Daly.
We actually only spend about $3 or $4 billion on people in their last year of life. And I think that's probably about the right number, given that the total budget in health is about $100 billion. I think that the really difficult questions that get raised in this area are things like, do we have enough palliative care for people when they get towards the end of life so that they don't die in pain? Do we have enough arrangements in place that people who want to die at home, and actually that's the majority of Australians, do die at home, because that's not what happens at the moment. At the moment, most Australians don't die at home, even though that's what they want to do. And that's about looking at the arrangements we've got for home care. It's about looking at the arrangements we've got so that people can write advanced care directives, as they're known, to make it very clear to their family and to their doctors what they want to happen to them. And many people at the moment don't have those kind of arrangements in place because it's a really difficult conversation. But it's a conversation that we need to have. It's a conversation that we need to encourage so that more Australians can die well. We will all die eventually, and we'd all like to die well when it happens.
All right, we're just getting close to the end of time, so brief answers. Kate Carnell.
Look, very brief answer. I think it's what you've brought up is so important. All Australians need to have an advanced care directive or a living will. We need to come to grips with the fact that we are living longer and we need to die with dignity. The cost of health will continue to escalate, there's no doubt. The number of people aged over 65 is going to double. The cost of health for people over 65 is 3 times that of the rest of the population. We've got to come to grips with how we manage that. Joe came up with some ideas in the budget. I think it's wrong to just say no, that we're not having any changes to health. We simply have to. The costs are escalating too quickly.
Chris Bowen.
Decisions about end of life, I think, can only be made by the individual if they're capable of making that decision, their family and their doctors together. And it's not something that politicians sitting around in Canberra or here can tell people what to do about. It shouldn't be driven, as Cassandra said, by health cost concerns. Cost of health is a real issue and there's all sorts of things that politicians can and should do about it, but end of life decisions and how people deal with the final periods of their life can only be made by them or their loved ones on the best advice of their doctors.
Joe Hockey, and you might want to reflect on Kate Carnell's statement at the end there as well.
Well, I must say I find this discussion really quite confronting. The thought that there is a price tag on your last days alive is just unacceptable. From my perspective, you need to live with dignity and die with dignity. And we have an obligation to ensure that every Australian is in that sort of position. And if we have to spend money to make sure that people die with dignity, then we will do it, to make sure that they've got the best health system available. And I understand where you're coming from, but my God, if it was my parent or my wife or whoever it may be, I want to make sure they get the very best health system in the world.